Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to True Crime and Wine. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherilyn, and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single upload. You know I love and I appreciate you so much. All right, I'm going to get right into today's case today. Before we do, though, I just want to put something out there and mention that I have seen the comments in the comment section about my mic. So yes, a couple months back, maybe like 2 months, not even, maybe about a month back, I got a new mic. I got a really good mic that I've been wanting for a long time, specifically so just our podcast episodes with Gavin and myself sound a little bit better and more like close, feels like you're there. So I use it for everything, obviously. And this mic actually, it drowns out like a lot of the sounds outside around me, and it just like really focuses on capturing my voice. And everybody's like, not everybody, but a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you sound so high pitched. Is this sped up? I don't know what's going on with your mic and your voice. And what you hear now is actually like the closest to my actual voice. So yes, it's really quite high pitched. My best friend actually, when I first changed my mic, messaged me and was like, oh my God, I love the mic because it makes it feel like I'm actually sitting with you now. So I just wanted to put it out there that you guys are not going crazy. I think, yes, you could, it sounds different. It's capturing more of my real voice. I hope you stay. But yeah, it's more high pitched, I guess, than the other one was capturing. All right. Let's get into the case. Today's case has been highly requested. I've held off on this past month, though. If you've been here for a while, you know that I generally don't cover cases that are headlining in the news that are still unfolding. And that's just because I don't really know in those really early days what is misinformation, what's speculation, and what's going to turn out to be fact versus fiction. And this case specifically was a great example of that, because even what we were seeing in those early days was a lot of confusion given by authorities to the public, being like, okay, we don't think that this was random. Okay, actually we do. We think it was somebody known. Actually, no, we don't. So as that stuff is unfolding, things change all the time, right? So there was a lot going on. I just wanted to hold off and kind of see how it transpired. And now that we are at an arrest, and we have an affidavit that is unsealed, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable with presenting as many facts as I can and not spreading misinformation or speculation or anything like that. Another part that made me feel comfortable in wanting to finally talk about this case is that the investigators themselves have asked for anybody who knew the alleged suspect to come forward with any information that you think might be helpful to the case and the investigation. I'll have ways of how you can do that in the description, as well as all of the links to the GoFundMes that the victims' families have created. All right, so I think the best way to start is just going through everything that we know thus far and how the investigation led to an arrest quite recently. If you are coming into this case with no prior knowledge, here is a brief synopsis. In the very early hours of November 13th, 2022, so just passed, 4 university students, 3 of which were roommates and 1 who was a boyfriend of one of the roommates, were brutally murdered at their home at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. I think something that has captivated everybody is these 4 victims were young, full of life college students. Their names were Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Moen, Xana Kernudel, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin. And learning about them coming from their family, their loved ones, their friends, it just really puts into perspective how senseless and gut-wrenching this was. I mean, pretty much everybody said how kind all of them were, how full of life, how loving they were. And for this to happen to them, especially in the place that they should have felt the safest in, really, really just sends chills up your spine. This was the home of 3 of the 4 victims. The girls shared the home, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana, with 2 other roommates. And it looks like just like the perfect house for them. It's got 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 3 stories, 2,300 square feet. I mean, just perfect for them. And I just can't imagine, all of the great memories that were made there that are now overshadowed by this horror. From what I can tell from the reports, it seems like there was 2 floors on each level. Kaylee and Maddie were on the top, on the 3rd level. One of the surviving roommates was on the main level. And that 2nd level had the other surviving roommate's bedroom, as well as Xana Kernoodle's bedroom. On this particular evening, on top of all of the 6 roommates being home, they also had Ethan over, who was staying with Xana and was in her room at the time that all of this happened. Now, Ethan was a freshman at Mount Vernon, Washington. He was a member of Sigma Chi fraternity, and he was in the process of studying recreation sports and tourism management. Ethan just sounds like such a phenomenal young man. He was a triplet. He was born first at 4:43 p.m. His parents said it was a beautiful Tuesday evening in October at the Swedish hospital in Seattle. And he was born to his parents, his dad Jim and his mom Stacy. His sister was born a minute later, followed by their other brother a minute after that. All of the Chapin kids excelled in school, and they also showed a really huge talent for sports, specifically soccer, and basketball, and then they also ran cross country. Some of Ethan's greatest memories are out on the basketball court, his family said, and he was out there doing that with his brother, wearing number 30 on his jersey. Now, during all of the COVID times there, Ethan was in high school at Mount Vernon, and then when classes were cut short, he and his siblings headed out to Idaho, where they went to work at the Hills Resort. For senior year, they headed back, but school, again, remember how it was kind of going all over the place? It sounds like this is around the time when it was doing that. So they worked at Tulip Town through the tulip season, which I guess has this annual tulip festival. It attracts close to 500,000 visitors. And Ethan loved it, and he definitely stood out in the crowd. He was good looking, he was tall, he loved his job, and he was kind to everybody. When work there was done, they headed back to Idaho just before getting ready to attend the University of Idaho. This was something the triplets did together. Everybody was like, of course, they're always with each other in whatever venture they had. So the whole family packed up, made the journey to the University of Idaho to drop the kids off. And when they got there, Ethan and Hunter joined the fraternity Sigma Chi, and their sister joined Kappa Alpha Theta sorority. While he attended university, everybody said he just literally lived his best life. He loved the social life. His family said he tolerated the academics. He obviously enjoyed playing sports. And if you didn't find him at the golf course, either golfing or working, you could usually find him surfing, playing sand volleyball, or pickleball. Pickleball is actually something I really would love to try to get into this year. I keep hearing people talk about how great pickleball is. And I guess Ethan loved it. He also is said to really love life. He was somebody who was just continuously laughing. He was the guy who was smiling when he woke up, and he still had that smile on him when he went to bed. And like I said, just truly somebody who was a friend to everybody that he met, and definitely left this everlasting impact on people's hearts. I think a really good insight into that is I heard that the tulip farm that he worked on was so affected by his death that they created this tulip tribute for Ethan. It's this mix of tulips, white and yellow tulips. And his boss said the yellow, of course, because go Vandals. I guess that's a University of Idaho thing. And the white because it is eternal color. He says that when the tulips come up in the spring, it's going to be this symbol of hope. And they've named this mix Ethan's Smile. I guess they have planted thousands of these bulbs in the state of Washington and sent a couple thousand more to the University of Idaho. So in spring, when they bloom, I just can't even imagine how poetic, beautiful emotional that's going to be. Although Ethan made a huge impact and impression on pretty much everybody he met, it sounds like there was one person in particular that he made the strongest impression on, and he saw the same in her, and that was his girlfriend, Xana Kernodle. Xana was from Ravndahl, Arizona, and she was a junior majoring in marketing and a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority. And as Ethan was described, Xana was described as always being happy as well and full of energy. I mean, just looking at pictures and watching videos of her, you can just feel it radiate through the screen. And it sounds like she's always just had that thing about her, that spark about her since she was born. She was born to her parents, Jeff Kernodle, and her mother, Kara Northington, on July 5th, 2002 in Coeur d'Alene. The place she grew up in, though, was Post Falls. She grew up there with her parents and siblings, her sister Jasmine and brother Elijah. Xana's described as a very talented gymnast as a child. It seems like she was really gifted in any athletic avenue, she embarked on. She attended Post Falls Middle and High School, and there she played volleyball, she ran track, she played soccer until she graduated in 2020. During high school, she had a job. She worked at the Texas Roadhouse, and after graduation, she went on to the University of Idaho, where she was majoring in marketing and was also an active member, like I said, of the Pi Beta Phi sorority. Some of the things Xana loved most in life was her dog, Shoeshine. She also loved EDM music, going to concerts, spending time with her friends, going on family trips with her sister and dad. And something that she really loved doing when she was younger was spending time on her grandma and grandpa's farm in the summers at the river. Xana is just described as just this light. She had this positivity and this outgoing personality that touched everybody. She was somebody who went out of their way to make everybody feel welcome. She also had this contagious sense of humor that made everybody who met her and came into contact with her remember her. While she was studying, she also had a part-time job at Mad Greek restaurant in Moscow. So between restaurant, working the restaurant and studying and all of the activities that she loved doing, she really didn't have a lot of time for like dating or anything like that. And she hadn't ever had a boyfriend before, so it was something that her sister said she even brought up to her dad. Like, do you ever think like Xana's gonna get a boyfriend? She's 20. But it just seemed like it was, just not something she was really focused on until she met Ethan. And just, hearing about the two of them, it really does sound like one of those match made in heaven relationships. Their personalities, their interests, their hobbies, their hearts sounded so similar. They began dating in the spring of 2022. And even though I don't know them personally, I mean, just like seeing videos and photos of them and just hearing people talk about them, you just feel that connection, One thing I loved seeing that really spoke obviously to their humor was their recent Halloween costume, which was when they dressed up as Gru and Vector. And it just broke my heart because I was laughing like, oh my gosh, they nailed that. This is so cute. And then I realized this was just weeks before their life was just ripped from under them. Without knowing them, I mean, I think it's really obvious that the world is a less bright place without them, and also without the other two victims who were Xana's roommates. And they were also lifelong best friends and chosen sisters, Kaylee Gonsalves and Maddie Moen. Kaylee was born in Concord, California on June 8th, 2001, and her parents said that even before her birth, Kaylee was just fire in life. She is a Gemini, and they say that all of her sides could definitely make you believe in astrology if you didn't already. She was her parents, Steve and Christy's third child, and they said she was wild and different. She was born with this jet black, thick curled hair with this little button nose and this perfectly round, beautiful porcelain face, and she had this tiny scar on her forehead that not even the doctors could explain, I guess. And her parents shared that, much to her dismay in later life, her siblings would tease her and say that those were her horns that tried to grow in. I'm sure you can just picture how those banters and conversations went behind the scenes. Christy and Steve continued to have 2 more girls after Kaylee was born, so that made her the middle child of 5. Now, around the age of 1, Kaylee and her family moved to North Idaho. And from a young age, Kaylee just sounded like she thrived. I mean, she was comfortably being herself, authentic. She was social. She always had this sense of humor. At a young age, I think she was fully relatable for young women that are her age now, who back in the day loved Claire's, getting all the fashion stuff and like the little accessories. And she was just always performing too for everybody around her so that she could get them to like belly laugh. Now in middle school, it was at Charter Academy where she met Maddie Moen. And from day one, their family said that they were just chosen sisters. And Kaylee's family said they went from a family of 5 siblings to 6. And this is one of those friendships where whatever one of them was doing, the other was doing. So when Maddie told Kaylee that she was going to Lake City High School for school, Kaylee got to working on like a presentation showing her family why she also needed to go to this school with Maddie. And it worked. And of course, when Maddie was going to University of Idaho, it was a no-brainer that Kaylee was also going. Kaylee joined the Alpha Phi sorority, and when she went, she originally started studying to become an elementary school teacher. And she's described as her sisters in Alpha Phi as just the most devoted, spontaneous, adventurous, and considerate sister. She had this really fun-loving prankster side to her. It was all in lightheartedness. And they said she just made sure that no matter what she did, no one ever left her presence without a smile. She's also described as really strong and driven and somebody that a lot of the younger sisters in the sorority looked up to. She made everybody feel welcomed and loved. She'd go out of her way to help anybody who was struggling with anything in life. She was also very determined. If she set her mind on something, she would do it. And she also really loved adventure. And this was like, we're talking if it was a spontaneous, I'm going to book a trip across the world right now, or let's get in the car and we're just doing this quick little road trip. It was actually really surreal seeing a recent photo of Kaylee when she went to Cabo with some friends, because it was taken at the resort where my husband and I got married. And 2 of my favorite photos are taken in this exact same spot that Kaylee has a photo with her friend and a video with her friend. And this spot isn't anything special. It's actually just like on this like little back walkway coming out from one of the, buildings. There's even like a little garbage can right there. It's not by the beach or anything. It's just so random at the back of the resort, just like in a resort that big of all the places, I like quickly showed Brent. I was like, oh my gosh, like, look at where this is. And he's like, oh my God, that's the back of the building we stayed in. But it's just something like that just goes to show you, like some form of relatability and connection, and really makes you remember that these are real people. This is such a tragedy, such a loss. Now, one of the reasons Kaylee was able to do a lot of this stuff is because she was a really, really hard worker. On top of excelling in school, having great grades, she always made sure that she had a full-time job. And she really took pride in that. She was able to travel. She was able to buy herself a lot of nice things and, own that baby girl bought that herself. I mean, just going through everything and hearing people's accounts of Kaylee, it's no surprise that she was so loved, and this is such a loss. One person in particular really, really did love her. And early on in this case, he was absolutely railroaded with suspicion and allegations. And that is her long-term boyfriend, who they had recently separated, broken up, gone their separate ways, but were still very much in love. And his name is Jack. Jack is 22, Kaylee 21, but they had been together for 5 years. And it was only 3 weeks prior to Kaylee's murder that they had broken things off, but they were still friends. Their families still loved the other very much. And on both sides, they just figured, they're going to do their thing, get through this period of time. They're going to come back together and they are going to get married. I mean, they even had a fluffy golden doodle named Murphy, their little fur baby that they shared. I mean, we know now that Jack had nothing to do with this. And when I saw that, there was just kind of this, obviously, anger, because I was able to see, okay, like now we have a face to put to this, and what the F were you doing? Like, why did you do this? But that aside, we'll get into that later. I felt this like vindication for Jack. I can't imagine what that would have felt like, especially because they would have been through a very confusing time in their relationship at that point. And that being, the last weeks of their story together really hurt to think about. And then to have people, even in the media, not even just social media, where things like spread like wildfire and people just like spout off anything and assumptions without having any consideration that like family and friends are going to be watching this, and him specifically. I cannot imagine what that would have been like for him to go through that and have people pointing the finger at him, that he would have been capable of doing this to all of these people, but specifically someone he loved so much. So yeah, that's this in prime example why I usually like to hold off before I'll talk about a case. Even Kaylee's dad was under suspicion. And I just want to clarify, by like the public court of opinion suspicion, not by actual investigators. Something that Kaylee and Maddie's family have both spoken publicly about is their comfort in one piece of this whole tragedy that happened. And the comfort for them is that both Maddie and Kaylee left this world next to who each of them referred to as their chosen sister. The two of them, although they had separate rooms, were both in Kaylee's bed the night of the murders. Maddie, like Xana, was a senior from Coeur d'Alene originally, and she was studying marketing and also a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority. Maddie was born on May 25th, 2001 in Eugene, Oregon, to her parents Benjamin Moen and Karen Laramie. And Karen describes their relationship as close as a mother and daughter can be. Now, both of Maddie's parents had remarried, so she had these additional parents who loved her, and coming from a home where I have step parents and all the great family that follows and trickles in, it's really not the worst case scenario when you have some really, really good people, added to your circle. And that sounds exactly like the situation that Maddie was in. Her stepfather, Scott, she referred to him as dad, and he very much saw Maddie as his only child. And he said that losing his only child, is the hardest thing that he's ever going to go through in the world. Now, although she was born in Oregon, when she was 2, the family moved back to Idaho, and they said that Maddie just had this wonderful, idyllic childhood. She went to Winton Elementary School, and then she joined the Coeur d'Alene Charter Academy and met her sister for life, Kaylee. Maddie also had this ability to make everybody laugh around her, and she had this sweet, angelic look to her, but then she would just catch you off guard with her offbeat, hilarious sense of humor. I guess it was also really known to those who loved her that you never let her go hungry. One thing that Maddie's friends and her sorority sisters loved was her focus and her dedication to the future that she was building for herself. Anything she put her mind to, she excelled in, and she put everything that she had into it, whether it was jobs that she had, her studies, her friendships. She really just gave everything to anything that she did. And once she got to University of Idaho, she made the dean's list every single semester. It was also at University of Idaho that she met the love of her life, a guy named Jake. The first time that anybody heard Jake speak out about what was going on, because again, like Jack, there was speculation and people making assumptions about Jake out there. So it was at the memorial that was held for the victims that Jake spoke about Maddie, and it just really touched me. Seeing that yourself could see how much he loved her. He says she was the person that he loved most in life, the first one that he spoke to when he woke up, the last one he spoke to when he went to bed. And she really was somebody who was truly his best friend. They actually had this friendship that had evolved for 2 years prior to them getting together. And his intention wasn't even really to try to date her. He said that, Maddie definitely knew her worth and was not going to let somebody just like easily woo her. But they started off as friends. They had actually gone to the same high school together, but he was a couple years older. So it was her freshman year of college when he met her through friends of her sorority. They actually met on her bid day, and they were buds. They did a lot of things together. They'd go on his boat. They would float the rivers. And then he said in the summer of 2020, he realized, oh my gosh, like I think I'm in love with Maddie. And then he would want to make plans with her, but not make it too obvious. So he would always like make plans with some of her friends to make sure that she would be there. And it actually wasn't until Valentine's Day 2021 that he built up the courage to, take things to the different lane of their relationship, of their friendship. And he asked her out on Valentine's Day of that year. And then they officially became a couple on April 27th of that year. He also described Maddie as a perfectionist. He said that her and Kaylee's birthday were actually only a month apart, and Maddie's was first. And so Kaylee would always, go out and throw this like big elaborate party for her. And then she'd get so frustrated because she's like, well, I've got to make mine better for her. And that's just how she's described, both of them, just trying to make everybody around them feel super special. And Maddie was always the one who was always telling everybody she was around that she loved them. She's always smiling, dancing, laughing. Something that I think a lot of us could relate to as well is she loved being comfy cozy. Anytime she was just, at home chilling, she'd have these like big comfy socks that she'd put on, get all nestled in her blanket. But most importantly, I think one thing that I saw a lot of people say that they're going to miss so much about her is her ability to just give her undivided attention to whoever she was with and speaking to in that moment. And you knew that it wasn't because, it was the polite thing that she was doing. It's because she genuinely cared. If you ever needed a hug or somebody to cry to, everybody who knew Maddie said that's who you went to, which just reminds you when you think about those things that all of those people who were touched by her in their life don't have that anymore. Now, like I said, when this story broke, there was so much speculation. One thing that I very much was wanting to wait for was just an official statement or, documents that we could read. And now that we have this unsealed affidavit, I'm able to go through and feel more comfortable about like the timeline and everything that transpired from the investigation. Now, the evening of November 12th, 2022 seemed like a pretty normal evening for these students. They're just out there living their best life. That evening, they weren't all together throughout the entire evening. Ethan and Xana were with the other surviving roommates at the Sigma Chi house. There was a little, shindig going on down there, and they were there from 9 p.m. until 1:45 a.m. going into November 13th. It's believed that when they left, they went straight to their house or Xana's house. And Kaylee and Maddie were at a local bar this evening, which was called the Corner Club. Now, there is video footage from the Corner Club that shows the girls there between 10 p.m. on the 12th into the 13th at about 1:30 a.m. Next, the two girls are seen on another video feed. This time it's at a local vendor food truck called Grubhub. And I guess they often stream their evenings on Twitch. So there was video footage of the girls there. They had gone there after leaving the bar, and then a private party gave them a ride at approximately 1:56 a.m. back to their house. My understanding is this isn't like an Uber, but like a drive service that the sorority students use. I hope I'm getting that right. I apologize if that's not. That was just my understanding of this private party. So they were familiar with them. I think this driver had given them a ride before, so was very familiar and was able to call investigators right away to be like, hey, like I saw the girls, I dropped them off at home. I didn't see anything suspicious at the time. Otherwise, I obviously wouldn't have left. So according to the timeline given by the surviving roommates, everybody was at home by 2 a.m. It sounds like, they carried on their evening, doing their own thing. We know just by phone records that between 2:26 and 2:44 in the morning, Kaylee had tried to get in touch with, her recently ex-boyfriend, Jack, who obviously she still very much cared for. So we don't know specifically when they went to bed, but we know that obviously Kaylee was up between those hours. But the surviving roommates say that everybody was at least in their room by 4 a.m. Now at this 4 a.m. time frame, things happen fast. And it's even that, speed and how brazen this was that just infuriates you and gives you the chills. Xana had a food order from DoorDash come at around 4 a.m. Now, one of the surviving roommates had already been in her room and she had already fallen asleep. But she said, again, around this 4 a.m. mark, she woke up and she said it kind of sounded like Kaylee was upstairs playing with the dog, like there was some wrestling going on. And then she thought she could hear this muffled sound of who she believed to be Kaylee saying, "Someone's here." Now, from the investigators, they have not said, that they 100% agree that it was Kaylee. Just based on forensic cell phone records, Xana was awake at that time for sure, that they can confirm, because it was 4:12 a.m. and she was scrolling on TikTok. They could see that she was on the TikTok app. Plus, her DoorDash had come just 10 minutes before that. Nonetheless, when she heard somebody say, "Somebody's here," she looked out the bedroom window, but she said that she couldn't see anything. So she walked over to the door, looked outside, didn't see anything, went back into her bed. Within minutes, she said that she heard a sound again. This time, she thought she could hear crying coming from Xana's room and something along the effect of, "It's okay, I'm gonna help you." She said this was coming from a male's voice that she didn't recognize. Based on a security camera that was just to the immediate northwest of their house, there is some distorted audio that they picked up that you could hear this whimpering of voices followed by this loud thud, and then you can hear a dog bark. And I guess this camera was only 50 feet away from Xana's bedroom. So at this point, when the roommate hears crying, she opens the door again, and this time she sees somebody in black clothing and their mouth is covered with a mask, but she can see their eyes and that they have these bushy eyebrows kind of walking towards her. She doesn't recognize him and she freezes. That's when this male walks towards the black sliding door. Her instincts just kick in and she puts herself in her bedroom, closes the door and locks it. Her description of this individual was about 5'10", maybe taller, male, not very muscular, and again had these bushy eyebrows that caught her attention. Before I keep going further into everything, I just want to say, please, 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 if you are going to comment on the case or your thoughts at all below, please do not comment anything about the surviving roommates. They are in exactly that. They're survivors. None of us have been in this situation, exactly this situation right here, in her shoes, in her brain, reacting in a situation like that. I can't imagine how much fear she would have had. And I also can't imagine, possibly what was running through her head. This house was also known to have people come in and out of. Obviously not random people, but lots of, friends knew the code to be able to get into and access the house. So I can only assume, in traumatic events like that, we are designed to soothe ourselves, calm ourselves down. I can just imagine her laying in bed being like, okay, that I'm overreacting. I didn't see what I saw. I'm not going to go, up, disturb my roommates now and be like, hey, I'm just going crazy in my room right now. She's probably trying to tell herself that it was nothing. It's going to be okay, soothing herself and trying to make herself go back to sleep. That's what I would assume. There is no motive for somebody who loved her roommates so much. These were her dear friends to be like, oh yeah, something horrific probably just happened right now, but I'm going to go back to bed. I don't at all believe that that's what she was struggling with mentally, trying to talk herself out of thinking the worst. Now, what we do know from phone records is that it was shortly before noon on the 13th that the surviving roommates did wake up, and they called close friends of theirs to come to the house because they were panicked and they thought that one of the victims on the second floor had passed out and they couldn't wake them up. I think that in itself just shows like a lot of fear running through them. I believe it's when the friends that they called came that they were able to get a closer look at what was actually the case, and that their friends were horrifically, brutally murdered and things set in. They called 911, and my understanding is that this call was very distraught, that the caller was in shock and unable to give information because they were in the process of like passing out. Now, these murders had been the first to happen in Moscow in 7 years. So I think, just based on the fact that it's one of those areas that people feel safe in, not a lot of crime, coupled with it being these 4 college students who their parents, have a hard enough time letting their babies go to college, be independent for, often the first time in their lives. And then this happens. They did everything right. This small, safe college town, this should have never happened. And I think that plays such a big role into why everybody was getting frustrated with the investigation. Like I said at the very beginning, there was like kind of mixed messages coming. There was a lot of speculation, accusations. But when the affidavit became unsealed, we were able to get a behind-the-scenes look of what actually was going on behind the scenes as they were trying to build a case and solve these murders. So I'm going to read through the affidavit, starting from the morning that the police arrived. So the affidavit that was unsealed, it has the reports from that afternoon, November 13th, from Peace Officer Brett Payne. Now, he arrived at the scene at 4 p.m. and he was there to keep everything safe and secure. Now, when he arrived, he was brought in from the bottom north door on the north side of the house. I believe on this floor, one of the surviving roommates' bedrooms was on. And then from here, he was brought upstairs to the second floor where Xana's bedroom was and one of the surviving roommates. So he reported that on the west bedroom of that floor, that was Xana's room. And in there, Xana's body was on the floor in her room with wounds caused by an edged weapon. Ethan was also in the room with what he describes as sharp force injuries. And based on what was provided by Xana's father, it is believed that Xana was awake, knew what was happening, and fought for her life because she had defensive wounds. They then went to the third floor of the home where Kaylee and Maddie's rooms were, and I guess Kaylee's room is on the west side and then Maddie's on the southeast, which shared a wall with the bathroom. When officers first arrived earlier on in the day when they went into Kaylee's room, her dog Murphy was in the room, but he was unharmed. But on Kaylee's single bed, both her and Maddie were found with stab wounds. Kaylee's room is actually where they discovered what turned out to be huge evidence. So to the right of Maddie on the bed, they found this tan leather knife sheath. On it, it had Kabar USMC and the United States Marine Corps Eagle, Globe, and Anchor stamped on the outside of it. And on the snap button was male DNA. They also found a latent shoe print that was just outside of the door of the surviving roommate, who gave her statement saying that she could hear something, looked outside, and then somebody walked past her. And this shoe print had this like diamond-shaped pattern on it, described as being similar to the Vans type sole. So on top of this, physical evidence, we know that in those very early hours, there was a video canvas done of the neighborhood and the close surrounding area to see if they can, pick up anything suspicious, see something like reoccurring. They're trying to get a suspect on video, and that is when this Elantra comes on their radar. And this is really fascinating to find out how all of this happened, and one of the aspects that I appreciate so much in a good, thorough investigation. So they pulled footage from surrounding areas and neighborhoods, and they submit this to the forensic examiner at the FBI. Based on looking at all of this footage, there was this Elantra, this white Elantra that was missing a front license plate that stood out to this investigator. So on the 25th of November, the Moscow PD put out this, bolo for surrounding law enforcement to be on the lookout for a white Elantra, which they said had been captured in the area of where the murders took place several times, starting around 3:29 a.m. to 4:20 a.m. And something about why this Elantra specifically caught their attention in that area at that time is because I guess this area is just known for being one where it doesn't get a lot of non-residential traffic of people who live there. You don't go out of your way to just drive around the area. And so outside traffic catches your attention. So this, this release goes out to the surrounding law enforcement. And on the 29th of November, at 12:28 a.m., Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo queried white Elantras at Washington State University. When he does this, he gets a hit on a 2015 white Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. I guess Pennsylvania doesn't require to have the front plates, so that's consistent with the description of this vehicle. And this vehicle is registered to a Brian Kohberger. They pull up his address. He lives at 201-1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman, Washington. And when they pull the photo up from his records, it's quite eerie because the description of the surviving roommate is pretty accurate in terms of where your eyes go first, and it's the suspect's eyes and these bushy eyebrows. Obviously, that's, not enough. They've got to dig deeper. So they're able to pull records, just traffic violation records. And sure enough, in August, he had just recently been pulled over for a traffic violation. And when he did that, he provided a phone number to that officer. From that, they're able to pull his cell phone records and trace his cell footprint, which unfortunately, it wasn't as easy said than done because it didn't lead right to the house on that evening early hours. But there was something suspicious, and it's that there was no cell activity. It wasn't pinging off any tower from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Now, right before it went off record, it did show that the phone was leaving his house and driving away. So it's not the phone died in the middle of the night or something like that and he didn't notice and turned it on and charged it. No, it was leaving and then it turns off and then it comes back on and then starts traveling to the residence. Now, although there wasn't a cell footprint for that time frame of when the investigators believed the murder occurred, there was records showing something equally as suspicious, and that was in the later early morning hours of the 13th, around 9 a.m. The cell phone again leaves Brian Kohberger's house and starts using the cell towers in the King Road residential area. It's using the towers between 9:12 and 9:21 a.m. and then travels back to Brian's house, arriving at about 9:32. And that just gives you the chills because, we know it's not uncommon for somebody who commits a crime to return to the scene of the crime. And so although this wasn't in the exact time slots of when it's believed the murders occurred, it is quite suspicious that all of a sudden in those early morning hours before 911 is called or anything, the cell phone is pinging off the towers in that area. Something they wanted to know is how far back the history of going into that area they can find. And so they go to June 2022 and they're able to see that his cell phone pinged from that area 12 times prior to the 13th of November. And all of those times that it pinged, it was either very, very late at evening or very early on, middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning hours. This is pretty decent evidence, but at this point it's kind of circumstantial, right? So FBI has surveillance on him. It goes on for about 4 days. But what they really, really want to try to nail down is that DNA evidence from the knife, the knife sheath on that little button clasp. Something else that they discovered from the phone records was a different address than Brian had listed for the Washington University, and this was an address that was in Albright, Pennsylvania. Doing a little bit of digging, they realized that this is the residence of Brian Kohberger's parents. So they head out there, and on December 27th, 2022, they go and they recover trash from the Kohberger family residence. Now, I guess this area is really nice. It's like a gated area. There's several ski resorts there, Pocono Raceway. So they send that evidence off to the Idaho State Lab. The next day, on the 28th, a report comes back that the DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of the suspect profile. At least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. Freaking genealogy DNA, man. I am a fan. Especially because we're seeing like so much of this from, like serial killers from like the 70s. Thinking they got away with it, but all of a sudden their like great-grandchild or grandchild submitted, an ancestry DNA query, and boom, they're busted. So on December 30th, 2022, Brian Kohberger, 28 years old, was taken into custody by the local police and the FBI. And this happened in the middle of the night. It was like, I believe it was recorded at like 1:28 a.m. And he was charged with 4 counts of murder and burglary. I think something that really shook everybody learning about this was learning about him and the fact that he was a PhD student who just in 2022 had just graduated for a master's in arts in criminal justice. Prior to this, he had also earned a bachelor degree in psychology, as well as a master's degree in criminal justice at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. Here at DeSales is where he learned a lot about forensic psychology, and he learned from criminologist Catherine Ravndahl. She has written a lot about the psychology behind murder, how to investigate and hunt murderers down. And it was while he was studying here that he posted a survey that was approved by the university for him to do, and it was on Reddit, and he was asking ex-cons about the crimes they committed and like the emotion behind it. I'll read a little bit about this thread here. So it says, research participation needed. Hello, my name is Brian. I'm inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. In particular, the study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense, with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. In the event that your most recent offense was not one that led to a conviction, you may still participate. Additional surveys are included after the one-ended section as to best understand your unique traits. The study should take about 15 to 20 minutes to fully complete. It says that you have to be 18 or older, your identity and your answers are completely confidential, and then it says student investigator Brian Kohberger. It has his email, and then if you want the link to do it anonymously, you can do so. So some of the questions that were in this survey have added, this extra element of terror. It's like, okay, was this literally like were your intentions for this project, or were you already like mentally going there? So some of the questions were, what was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Please detail any thoughts and feelings at this point. Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. Before leaving, is there anything else you did? After committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. Why did you choose that victim or target over others? After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target, i.e. person or object? Please detail your thoughts and feelings. After committing the crime, what were you thinking and feeling? So just, given what happened, very unsettling. I guess that quite recently in the fall, he had applied for an internship at the Pullman Police Department. And on his application, he listed that his interest was to assist rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data. Also kind of makes you wonder, I guess his degree is in criminal justice. So, working for a police department would be like off the spectrum of what he was studying, but that it kind of makes you think like, was he wanting an in to like no information? Who knows? In terms of Brian, what's coming out about him is nothing really in your face obvious that this was to be expected. He's described by a lot of people as being socially awkward, not very popular, having a lot of friends, but when people did have interactions with him, he seemed, relatively friendly and kind. He was just didn't talk, go out of his way to like talk a lot. One thing that a lot of people say is that he was very intelligent. One close friend that has come forward said that they were friends when they were younger. And she said that Brian was really funny and nice. He was weird, but she described it as like not criminal weird, just weird. And she didn't really see any red flags until he fell into hard drinking and hard drug use underage. And I guess he did get quite heavily into heroin, and that demolished any of the friendships that he did have. In high school, students who knew him said initially when he started school, he was down to earth. He was overweight. Again, not like overly out there, but, nice, funny. That was in like freshman and junior year. And then in senior year, those who knew him said that he came back to school and he was just thin as a rail. He was very aggressive. He had taken up boxing and was just trying to fight anybody and everybody. And then at that point, more people who knew him just like completely kept their distance from him. Those same friends said they're not really sure when he had gone into recovery, but the last that they had seen him, they were aware that he had gone into recovery and he was doing quite well. They even had a conversation being like, we're really proud of you. You look like you're doing great. Good for you. You're going to school. You're really focusing on your studies and making something of yourself. In 2001, he was working at the Pleasant Valley School District as a security guard, and there was even like a newspaper write-up of him for saving one of his colleagues from a medical emergency. So it's really frustrating to think back on these character descriptions and nothing really indicates something this tragic was going to happen. So where things are at right now, last week on the 5th of January, he was transported back to Idaho after he signed his waiver of extradition. So a lot of people were waiting to see if he was going to do that. If he didn't, this whole process could have been dragged out a lot longer. The lawyer representing him at the time made a statement saying that he's anxious to prove his innocence, wants to get to Idaho so that proceedings can go forward and that he can present his case. So I guess we'll see where it goes from there. When he made his first court appearance, the judge informed him that the maximum sentence, if he was found guilty or if he pleaded guilty, was death. And she asked him if he understood, and he said yes. But as of today, January 9th that I'm recording, you guys will probably see this on the 11th, but as of the 9th, there has been no plea entered.
The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Again, the maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is death and or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
So at this point, I believe that, the records are going to be pretty sealed and any factual information is going to be pretty tight-lipped because, there's only one shot at this. I think it's fair to say that we all want to see justice done. We all want to see it done properly. And so I'm just going to be stepping back while all of that happens, letting justice, take the reins, the investigation go forward. And I'm going to be praying so hard for all of the victims' family and friends. If anything major comes to light, obviously I will keep you guys posted. But for now, I just wanted to do one video just outlining everything that we know from start to finish at this point. And, let the investigators and the lawyers do their thing now. I do want to end this off with ways that you can help the victims' families, and there's quite a few ways you can do that. There's several different fundraisers, GoFundMe's going on. So I have all of those linked in the description below. I just wanted to read something that was actually on Ethan's obituary from his family. And it just kind of goes to show, you know, obviously a piece of his character coming from his family that raised him and just like their hearts. So it said, in lieu of flowers, Ethan trained and loved Tyler Amaya. Tyler coaches youth basketball programs in Skagit County. I hope I didn't pronounce that wrong. This is what Ethan would want. Tyler will use the money to help and coach local youth. Checks can be made and mailed to PNW Rain, 2915 E Blackburn Road, Mount Vernon, Washington, 982474, or Venmo at Tyler Amaya. Or you can go to Ethan's GoFundMe, which is Ethan Chapin Memorial Fund by Sigma Chi Gamma ETA. And then it just says that the family will forward any of the money donated to Tyler for, you know, this youth basketball program, which just pulls on your heartstrings just to show, you know, like he's making an impact in so many ways after he's been gone. And all of the victims, Maddie and Kaylee have a GoFundMe, as well as Xana's family. So I have all of that linked in the description. And like I said, if you have any contact information that you think would be pertinent to the case, that is also down below. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. That is it for me today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. It truly, truly does. I love and I appreciate you so much. I will see you in the next video. You already know I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.